Can you recall the meeting you had with Ridley Scott?
Like it was yesterday. And I will answer that, but I'm going to be annoying and answer some. I want to talk about the meeting I had before Ridley Scott, because I think there's a teaching moment in here. So I had an idea for a movie, and I pitched it to my agent, and she goes, oh, I think this is great. Let's take it out to the marketplace. And then she said, let's make a list of our dream places that we want to sell it. So she goes, if you could sell it to anyone, who would it be? And it was so heady. I thought like, oh yeah, who would I sell it to? And I said, Ridley Scott. She kind of laughed like, okay, yeah, we'll take it there. And then when they pass, we'll go down the list, then we'll go to places that actually could. So I go into Ridley Scott and I pitch with Sue Williams, who is a development executive, smart, nicest woman. And you know, this is really important when you're pitching, is you're trying to get as much information. So I was pitching her this project, and at some point I saw her body language shift, and I go, oh, is something off about that? And she goes, Ridley doesn't like these kind of things. I think this is really exciting for him, but not if it's going down that road. I'm like, what kind of things does Ridley like? And so she started sharing things. It was so helpful. So we could kind of retool the pitch together. And so she was instrumental. So when you go somewhere and you're pitching, you know, you're trying to get as much information from that person. And it's a real, sometimes writers have ego and they're like, yeah, I'm going in this place and I'm pitching to the lowest person on the totem pole. Oh, that's great, because you get information about the decision maker. Okay, so Sue Williams helped me reformulate the pitch in a way that would be a better fit for Ridley. So that was amazing, and that I will forever be grateful for her. Then I got brought in to pitch to Mimi, who was at the time Ridley's producing partner. And this is a long pitch. This is almost an hour pitch. It's like a 50-minute pitch. This is not a short pitch. I always hate when people say, your pitches have to be this amount of time. There's no rules. Like, first of all, when someone says you have to do your pitch in 10 minutes, people think that people will listen to you for 10 minutes. They'll listen to you as long as they're interested. And if they're not interested after 30 seconds, they tune you out. And most pitches that sell are longer pitches because people want to have the confidence that this has been worked out and what they're buying is legit. Anyway, so it's a long pitch. So I'm pitching to Mimi, and it can't be going worse. She's sitting back like this. She's not making eye contact. She looks in pain. She looks like this pitch is so bad that it is making her go crazy. And the only reason I have a career is, at the time, I wanted to be doing stand-up or improv, so I was pursuing that. And in improv, I was learning that one of my problems, my weaknesses, is when I thought things were going well, I was alive and animated. But when I thought things weren't going well, I didn't think the audience was into it. My fear of rejection runs through this. I would sort of back off and sort of tune out of the scene. I'd kind of let you guys take it. I would just sort of drop out of the scene, which is, you don't do that as an improviser. So what I was being taught is, when you think things are going terrible, walk to the center of the stage, take focus and say something, and just stay in there, stay alive. Don't worry about people's judgments. Follow your process. So I'm pitching, and after about 7 minutes, I'm like, she hates me, she hates this pitch, she's never gonna buy it, she's in pain. And that voice says, just do the short version and get out of here. This is painful for her, it's painful for you. Ridley was never gonna buy this pitch. Just get out of here, just wrap it up and go. Which I would do as a stand-up, terrible habit. But another voice said, okay, look, you're never gonna be a writer, as evidenced by the pain you're causing this woman. Maybe you could be a performer. So use this as a way of practicing your improv skills. Stay engaged, stay engaged. That voice went through my head. So I stay engaged, and I just did the pitch with gusto and focus, and tried not to look too much at Mimi and see how much pain she was in, and I finished. And then there was just silence. I mean, painful silence. And then she stands up and she goes, I don't get it. And then Sue Williams said, well, what don't you get? She goes, all of it. Then she looked at me and she goes, like something like, maybe we'll be in touch, or just something, and walked out. And Sue didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say. And then I left and I drove home and I called my agent and I'm like, well, you were right. Ridley's not going to buy this. Then Sue calls me and I pick up the phone, you know, and she's like, hey, when you pitched with me, you were really good. But when you pitched for Mimi, and I know where this is going, she said, you were on fire. Mimi loved it. Now, there's a lesson in this, which is, don't try to read the room, because I've pitched to people, I've pitched to heads of studios that laughed and loved it, Because when someone's hearing a pitch, they're trying to decide, am I going to buy this? Am I going to take this to my boss? That could be stressful. And I pitched to a studio once where he knew right away he wasn't going to buy it because they had a similar idea in development. So he just relaxed and had fun with me. We had a great time, but he already knew he wasn't going to buy it. I found out Mimi like only takes 1 or 2 pitches to Ridley a year. And when she was hearing this pitch, she was like internally going, oh my God, this is something Ridley would really love. And I can't speak for her, but I'm guessing that maybe she was nervous because maybe she was thinking, do I really want to put my career on the line with this guy? Like, I was a nobody. I was in film school. I was like 23 and green as they came. And I think that she probably, hearing the pitch, was having an internal debate. You know, again, I can't speak for her, but that's my guess. So Sue's like, yeah, I probably should have told you she could be a little like, that's sort of her way she listens. So don't read people's, like, I've been in rooms where people seem like they hated it, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Stay committed, have integrity, do the pitch. Okay, so to your question, sorry for the long wind-up. So I was told that Ridley wouldn't be back in town for a month. Mimi did have one big concern that she wanted changed. It was a hard creative thing to figure out, but I'm like, I have a month to figure it out. A few days later, I told you I got a phone call. Here's what I didn't tell you. I don't drink much alcohol. I'm just a lightweight. I'm the cheapest date ever. And the night before, I was at some party and I drank more than I've ever drank in my life. And it doesn't take much to get me drunk. I think that morning might have been my first ever hangover, or was the worst ever hangover. So when the phone rang, I hadn't showered, I hadn't shaven, I was hungover, it was my agent. And she said, Ridley's in town. And he would like to hear the pitch. He has a slot. In an hour, can you hear the pitch? And it takes 45 minutes to get there to Beverly Hills from where I was. And so I said, and this is not a good idea, but I said, oh, that's exciting. Can we bump it up till 2? And there was this long pause. And I know my agent was thinking, why did I sign this guy? And she said, so Corey, Ridley's in town. He has a slot. He'd like to hear your pitch in an hour. And at least then I was like, of course, I will be there in an hour. This kind of works out to my favor. So I quickly shave and shower, and on the drive, drink coffee, on the drive over, I'm just figuring out how to solve that creative problem. What happened is I got there with a second to spare, and they jerked me into the room with them. I never had the chance to get nervous. I never had the chance to psych myself out. I was just on pure adrenaline. And Ridley was the sweetest person ever. He came in the room, you know, and I started to like, you know, it's an honor. And it was like Blade Runner and Alien. Like it was a literal honor to be in a room with him, let alone the fact that he was going to listen to me pitch a project. And he just immediately said, like, you know, we're just 2 creative people. I want to hear your idea. You don't have to be great at performing. My staff loves it. I just want to hear. Like, he went out of his way to make me feel comfortable and that I belonged there. Because I did not feel like I belonged in a room pitching to Ridley Scott. And I was just on adrenaline with no no time to prep, you know, psych myself out. And so I just started talking. And he was just, he listened and he nodded and he was so receptive and he was so loving and gentle. I'll never forget that. And he was just amazing. And then at the end, he asked the question that you always want to hear, which is, he said, so who else has heard this pitch? And I said, nobody, you're the first pitch. You're the first play. He goes, well, who else is going to hear this pitch? And I gave some of the places that we had meetings set up. And he looked at his staff and then he turned to me and he said, who's your agent? And I told him, Dan Cairns, ICM. And he called my agent and he said, I want to take this off the market. So that was just like, I really thought I was dreaming. And then I remember I was driving home in my like cruddy little car, my little Flintstones car, my wife called it, because you had to use your feet to stop it. Film school, no money car. And I was driving on the 405 and I started shaking. I just was shaking. I had to pull over. And the thought that went through my head wasn't that I just launched my career. It wasn't that I just sold. The thought that went through my head was, I just met Ridley Scott. It was so nerdy. I was just in, and not only that, once the deal was consummated, they said, we want you on the next plane to London so that Ridley and his team will develop the structure with you. And they meant the literal next plane to London. So my wife and my girlfriend at the time, now wife, Rebecca, we were like, she's like, I'll help you pack, because I don't know how to pack. And I'm like, great. And she's getting all my clothes. She goes, where's your suitcase? I'm like, what? I don't have a suitcase.
Oh, no.
So we ran to like Target and bought a suitcase and everything. And then they flew me first class. And I didn't know first class existed. I didn't know what first class was. Grew up with no money. So they kept bringing me like food and wine. And I was like, no. I was thinking, I can't afford this. You know, like I don't want to pay for all this when I land. And then at some point in London, someone said, no, in first class, it's all included. So on the way back, I was like, more food, more wine. But yes, Ridley he treated me throughout the entire process. And he called me when they weren't going to make it, and he explained why, which he didn't have to do. Throughout the entire process, he treated me like a writer who belonged to be there. And someone that he wanted to hear my opinions. He didn't want me just to defer to him. I mean, it was amazing. I'll forever be grateful for that. He spoiled me, because at some point I was like, well, that's how everyone. Now that's how I've worked with some of the best people in the business. That's how they treat writers. And I've worked with people who don't treat writers that way, so.
When you pulled over on the 405, do you remember, was there a song playing on the radio, or?
I don't. I just remember, I remember I was going to crash. That's a good question. I don't remember. I just kept thinking I came home and my girlfriend was like, so? And I'm like, I met Ridley Scott. And she's like, I know you met Ridley Scott, but, oh yeah, he bought it. But I was just a little film school nerd who was excited to meet Ridley Scott.